Twins are a very well-established narrative device. They can be used to communicate themes of duality and split identity, as well as providing the perfect comedic setup for mischievous hijinks. And this obsession with twin-based symbolism is by no means a new phenomenon. The ancient Rome origin story, for example, features twin brothers Romulus and Remus. The power struggle between the two, as well as the eventual fratricide that occurs, can be interpreted as an embodiment of Roman attitudes towards strength, morality, and progress in an ends justify the means kind of way. Identical twins in particular have historically been surrounded by a lot of mysticism and suspicion. The whole concept of a version of yourself existing that looks and acts the same as you, but yet you have no control over, is prime uncanny valley territory. And this underlying fear of an evil double fracturing a person's sense of self can be found extensively throughout doppelganger and changeling type folklore all over the world. But anyways, circling back to the point of this video, twins can make for a super fun literary or filmic device. And today I want to look at the different variations of on-screen twins, how they're created, and what the ethical or logistical implications are. This video will cover 3 types of on-screen twins, starting with twins who are actually just twins, then looking at twins who are played by the same actor, and finally looking at twins, sometimes in quotations, who play a single character. So, first category, 2 characters, 2 actors. Pretty simple stuff here. You've got your Fred and George Weasley, your Zack and Cody Martin, both sets of twins playing twins. From a production standpoint, this is amazing. You don't need to worry about body doubles or CGI or any of the other bollocks we'll get onto in the next section. However, there's a pretty obvious drawback here. Identical twins, kinda rare. There's estimated to be about 40 million identical twins in the world today, and that equals to less than 0.5% of the global population. There's already a pretty slim pool of potential candidates for your next twin-centric blockbuster. Then, if you add on all the additional requirements such as age, language, acting ability, desire to even act in the first place, that pool's now more of a puddle in the Sahara. Also, from an actor perspective, I think if you get cast alongside your twin from an early age, it might be a little hard to shake that association and kind of do your own thing later on. But it seems to be working out pretty well for the Olsen twins. And alternatively, you can star as a street fighter who uses Pigeon as a pet name, or just smoke tabs on a podcast. So identical twin actors are a great option for playing identical twin characters, but good luck finding a pair that meet any specific role requirements. Thankfully, this gap in the twin market can be solved via the next category. 2 characters, 1 actor. Now this option provides an ideal solution to the real-world twin shortage because you can have 1 actor portraying 2 different roles at the cost of a whole truckload of technical and logistical implications. There are some handy-dandy tricks that make this all possible. The first and most simple is just to not have the twins appear in the same shot. Obviously, overusing this strategy would be kind of immersion breaking. However, a variation of this trick is commonly employed in scenes that incorporate an over-the-shoulder shot or when one twin has their back to the camera. Essentially, films just need to use a body double to establish the presence of a second twin within the frame, and then they can cut between shots of the actor portraying each role, thus creating the illusion of 2 identical characters interacting with each other. Onto a more techie technique, the split screen. This involves using a locked camera in combination with a digitally composed split screen. What happens here is that the actor films the scene twice, alternately portraying each twin, and the camera setup is fixed to ensure that each take is framed identically. These 2 takes are then stitched together in post-production to make it seem as if both characters exist in the space simultaneously. This method often also includes the use of a body double to stand in for the absent twin. This helps make sure the eye lines and timings are all kept in check. The pretty obvious drawback here is that whole having to film everything twice thing, because time is money when it comes to filmmaking, and double the filmmaking means double the cost. Although I do think that on balance it's probably cheaper to have Michael B. Jordan film a sequence twice than it would be to hire another Michael B. Jordan. So swings and roundabouts, I guess. Now the use of this split screen technique to create on-screen twins has been around for decades, with some early standouts including Wonder Man, Parent Trap, the original, and Dead Ringer. These films were obviously created way before 2 shots could be digitally compiled, and so filmmakers would place a mask on the camera to conceal half the shot and then have the actor play each twin on either half of the frame. These 2 shots of film could then be spliced together to create the whole sequence. Now this was a finicky process to say the least, with everything needing to stay perfectly consistent between takes in order for the effect to be convincing. There'd also always be a seam between each half of the frame, which obviously nowadays would be a quick fix in the editing suite, but back then filmmakers would use various background elements to kind of disguise this fragmented appearance. This need to mask each each half of the frame and keep everything in the shot identical, including where the camera was, meant that these early on-screen twins were confined to a lot of static, symmetrical shots, which, while a tremendous technical accomplishment for the time, feels a little boring when placed next to modern twin-centric films such as Sinners and Legend. This stagnant feel would thankfully be a thing of the past upon the development of motion control cameras. These cool little robot gadgets could memorize precise camera movements and repeat them to create identically framed shots. And to be clear, this technology is useful for way more than just creating twins. It can be involved in a whole range of VFX trickery. My personal favorite involves miniatures, because with motion control you can scale the camera movement to fit with differently sized models and therefore create the illusion of these giant sets that seamlessly lead into actor-sized frames. Anyways, back to twins. The advent of motion control cameras means they can do things like exist in tracking shots. There's still this invisible line between each half of the split screen which the actor must avoid crossing, but because the camera can now follow a predetermined path, there's a lot more flexibility for creating dynamic and more visually interesting shots. I think another technology that most people will be aware of is green screen. These are super useful for creating twins. Having actors perform in front of a green screen means they can be cut out and inserted into a scene. This also resolves the whole issue of actors crossing that invisible line because everything can be layered and compiled to make a harmonious shot. One of my favourite examples of this technique in action is in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, mainly because the behind the scenes footage of Daniel Radcliffe getting to impersonate 6 other characters just looks like a lot of fun. However, green screens are a magic bullet because they do still require a lot of precise measurements to ensure that any interaction between the twins appears natural. Also, they can kind of struggle when placing twins into outdoor settings because, you know, the outdoors is a lot of green. Also, I'm told. But on to more recent developments in the twin creation space, because we now have the ability to just straight up create people digitally. Unfortunately, that's sometimes achieved by AI deepfake slot, but it can also be done by talented VFX artists and super freaking cool Halo rigs, which I'll get onto in a second. Digital twins are used for a lot more than just creating twins. In fact, they're most commonly used in action sequences that either heavily feature CGI monsters or include stunts that are too dangerous for humans to perform. Sometimes a digital double is also used to conceal the presence of a stunt performer, and I'll get into that more in the next section. So, I know what you're thinking. Great, we can just create a digital copy of the actor to act alongside them and twin debacle solved. No, absolutely not. Digital humans are beyond expensive to create, and quite frankly, we are way too complicated from an anatomical perspective to replicate convincingly over a long period of time. The sheer amount of time and money that would be needed to create a seamless, non-Play-Doh looking version of Tom Hardy and make it give an award-winning performance as one of the Grey Twins is just logistically unfathomable. However, what is more fathomable is to employ a bit of that face swap action used to freak your nan out with, because through the power of motion capture technology, mocap for short, we have the ability to digitally render a person's face and stick it onto someone else. There are actually several different mocap systems, but the one most often used for capturing facial expressions is optical tracking. This involves placing a load of little dots, known as retroreflective or LED markers, all over the actor's face. These markers are then captured by multiple cameras to build a 3D model of the actor's face, and the more cameras, the more accurate and efficient this process will be. This is where that funky looking Halo rig from Sinners comes in. This thing is awesome. It incorporates 10 cameras onto a wearable carbon fiber rig that was then used to provide 360-degree footage of Michael B. Jordan's facial expressions. It's also a markerless system, so no little dots required. This digital map could then be used to transplant his face onto a body double, allowing for the smokestack twins to interact seamlessly, even in complex fight sequences. Part of the reason why this Halo rig is so cool is because it's mobile. It can be taken on location, and thus gives filmmakers like Ryan Coogler more flexibility within their twin creation process. Plus, it looks really fun to wear. Anyways, that's a very brief overview of the kind of techniques used to create on-screen twins. However, so far we've only covered twins that we as an audience are meant to see. So how about the twins that are hidden from us? Let's take a closer look in our final section, 1 character, 2 actors. The title of this section may seem a little confusing, but we've actually already covered one instance of these twins in the form of body doubles. Body doubles, or stunt doubles, are oftentimes the unsung heroes of blockbuster films, which sucks because there'd be no twinning Michael B. Jordans without body double Percy Bell to stand in for the missing twin. Outside of purely twin-related scenarios, body doubles are an integral part of any action film and perform all the sequences that are too dangerous or physically demanding for the actor to fulfill. That is, unless you're Tom Cruise and have whatever the hell Scientologists believe in watching over you. Body doubles aren't just used for stunts though, they're also used in a lot of scenes involving nudity. I think this is a really important use for digital twins because it takes away any pressure placed on actors to get the kit off in front of a whole ass camera crew and, you know, the millions of people watching it on screen. screen. This can also be done for practical reasons, say if the actor's pregnant or has body modifications such as tattoos or piercings that don't really fit with the character. Body doubles can come in handy there too. But moving back to actual twins, because another instance in which they can be found is playing very young characters. Twin children can be used to fulfill the role of a single child, and this is a fairly common practice, especially in TV shows, with examples including Lily from Modern Family, Michelle from Full House, and Abel from Sons of Anarchy. Now, the reason behind this twin strategy is to circumvent child labour laws. Thankfully, children are subject to much stricter limits in regards to how long they can be working for, but this poses a problem for producers who don't want to waste time waiting for little Timmy to finish his nap. Thus, double the child means double the number of hours you can have the character available for. Twins are also used a lot for scenes involving babies because, as you might know, babies are kind of known for crying and being generally unreasonable, so having another one on standby to swap in is pretty useful. Plus, twins are more likely to be born premature, so their smaller size means they can more convincingly portray newborns despite being a little older. Whilst the idea of using twins to dodge child labour laws doesn't fully sit right with me, it's certainly preferable to overworking child actors, so adequate job, I guess. The final kind of on-screen twin I want to talk about is easily the most controversial, especially in recent years, and it's the dead twin. By that I mean an on-screen twin that stands in for an actor who has passed away. We first got a taste of this digital reanimation in Fast and Furious 7, when actor Paul Walker tragically died in a car crash before the film could finish shooting. In order to complete the film, a number of body doubles were used to stand in his place, and a digital composite of Walker's face was superimposed onto them. Now, this is a very complicated issue. In Walker's case, it's clear that he was very much on board with being in the film before his death, and his close family were supportive of this approach. Walker's two brothers actually filled in as body doubles at various points. So in this case, all seems well and good, honestly. However, the notion of digitally recreating someone who is no longer with us and therefore can't give consent as to how their likeness will be used definitely falls into morally dubious territory, and again, doesn't sit quite right with me. And I'm certainly not alone on this one. Back in 2019, a Vietnam War action drama film called Finding Jack was announced. Why is this relevant, you ask? Well, Finding Jack was set to star a cultural icon, James Dean. Yeah, the same James Dean who died all the way back in 1955, now digitally reincarnated for a modern audience. And in fairness, the production did get the blessing of the actor's estate, so that's something, but ultimately the project was cancelled largely because of the backlash it received. The reason I wanted to end here is because I think it gives some indication as to the spectrum of ways digital twin technology is currently being used. On the one hand, you've got Sinners, an absolute artistic masterpiece that I love, and on the other hand, you've got this kind of sinister, non-consensual deepfaking that I hate. Anyways, point is, technology is only as creatively bankrupt as the people using it. So, dear God, please let's use it to make more vampire films with hot twins. Well, I guess that's the moral of this video. Thank you for watching, leave a like if you liked it. Bye!